Welcome to the Secret Art of Business. My guest today is Jeff Burt. Jeff, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. And Jeff is the owner, CEO of Eclipse Corp, which was started in 1994, which is crazy. That is a long time ago. And we used to work together, through retail experience and things like that. But you're so far beyond that anymore. Um, but you've been in photography for a long time, though, too. And I do want to talk about that specifically. But first, let's talk about Eclipse. Um, what do you all do over there?
We do a lot of things. So we actually make a lot of crazy cool things. So we started out strictly as photography back in '94, and we have grown today into doing everything from 3D printing to grand format printing. I have a full trade show division. Actually, our name has changed to Eclipse Creative,
Oh,
and yeah, so
cool.
that happened last year. And so we have three divisions under it. So we have Eclipse Studios, which is what started the whole thing, as photography, video, and design. And then we have Eclipse 3D PI, which does our 3D printing, our traditional printing, installation graphics. So I do like all Buffalo Wild Wings stores. I do Dave and Buster's, a whole bunch of different brands all around the country. And
Hmm.
then we have a third division that we started last year called Eclipse Exhibits that does nothing but trade shows. And it is right now becoming our fastest growing division
Oh my
by far.
goodness. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
So is that big printed things and the booths and everything that kind of goes along with that?
You got it. I mean, it's 10-foot wide by whatever length people want to go, and
Oh, that is exciting.
large booths. We just did a large booth for Wendy's that was, I think it was a 40 by 40. So pretty small houses. Let's put small houses out of
Right.
fabric.
Right. What is the coolest thing you've got to print with the 3D printer?
Probably our Yoda that's in our front lobby.
Oh
So
my God.
yeah, we have a 5'10" Yoda, and we made him right before COVID to go do a pitch to Disney. And unfortunately, when COVID hit, that all stopped.
Yeah.
So now he's a showpiece in our studio, and people love him. They come in. Anybody who comes in for a tour sees Yoda, and they immediately have to do selfies, and especially if
God,
they're
how
Star
big
Wars.
is it? Is it like a full size
He's
Yoda?
5'10". He's 5 foot tall. Yeah, 5 foot 10 inches.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah,
So
you
he's
would have to
big.
get a photo with that.
Yeah, yeah. And we also have in our front lobby 2 7-foot Rock'em Sock'ems. That are actually right now, they're not in our lobby. They're at a show for a client. They asked if they could rent them for
Oh
a trade show.
wow.
So we shipped them out to, I think it went to Phoenix.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's really awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Now, I mentioned it kind of in passing that you have been in photography a long time, and essentially you went to college for that. That was your degree in photography. What made you really get interested in photography?
So when I was in high school, I played, some of the sports. I was a football, baseball, basketball, some of your traditional sports. And I was very, very tiny. I was 5'4". I weighed 95 pounds.
Oh, that's
So
funny because I know how tall you are now.
yeah, I'm 2 now, yeah, a little bigger now. And my high school coach, like, I remember my freshman year, we had our freshman team, and the freshman team didn't have enough players. So we were a very small school. So we only had 11 guys. So they were like, we can't have 11 guys playing both sides of the ball for one injury, we're done. So they said, we're going to dissolve the team, and anybody on the freshman team can be on the varsity team. But the coach pulled me aside and said, I don't
No.
want you playing. And he goes, that's no good. He goes, but you're so tiny. He goes, I don't want you to get hurt. He goes, so I'm just going to suggest you do something else. So I actually started taking pictures at the game and kind of fell in love with photography. And so I shot for the yearbook and basically became a hobby that became a little bit more and more and more. And eventually I went to school for it.
That's so cool. But that's not a straight path to um being the yearbook photographer to essentially owning your own business.
No.
You did take a detour, and I would love it if you could share that story.
Sure, sure. So I also did. So I love baseball. It was one of my passions, and then I also got into acting, and it was
Mhm.
by chance. So it started. I actually was in a choir that you had to do an elect, either band or choir back in school. And so one day in choir they said we're going to do solos, and everybody's got to do a solo. And they asked me to. I was the first one who had to go, and I was like, at that time I never sang or anything like that at all in my life. So I sang a little bit, and then I was like, and at first I joked around, and the teacher's like, "Nope, you got to do it right." And so I finally did it right, got done. And at the end of the class, he calls me and goes, I need to talk to you. And I thought I was in trouble for goofing around. And he goes, you can sing. I want to take you to contest. And so he took me to a contest, which I ended up winning
Oh
um,
my God.
that year. It was my freshman year. And then he asked me to try out for a musical. And I was the only freshman. It was the Fantastics. And I was a mute. So I had no lines. I didn't sing at all, nothing at all. But I kind of fell in love with it, and I got into acting, and the more I did it, the more I started to do more and more with it. And so I just realized about 16, I'm not going to be a professional baseball player. I was kind of a jack of all trade, master of none. So
Hmm.
I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll be a professional actor, and I could do that, and I could be anything I want to be. I could be a baseball player, lawyer, doctor, photographer, whatever. And so I went to LA. After I graduated from college, I packed my car up and drove to LA. Lived out there for about 3 to 6 months, giving it a shot. And I lived out of my car. It wasn't going great because I knew nobody I didn't know anything. And I
Yeah.
was 21 years old. I had $500. It was kind of a disaster, but through it all, good experience. Slept in my car some nights. I would get really, really, really cheap hotels some nights, just so I could take a shower and stuff. And I had a sister who lived in Northern California, so she said, "Why don't you kind of come up here, get your feet settled, and see if you can find a job, and then just keep doing your acting thing and figure it out." So I drove up to Northern California after about 3.5, 4 months. Um, Went to stay with her, start job hopping and looking for a job. And by chance, I walked into a company. I was going to an interview with another company. I walked into this other company and everybody's scrambling. Everybody was like, who is this guy? And I said, I'm here for an interview. And they didn't have me on the schedule because I turns out I was at the wrong place. So the owner of the company met with me. It was a photography company, and he's like, he goes, he goes, son, he goes, I don't know what to tell you. You got decent work, but you're a little young. He goes, but I don't have a job for you. And I go, well, I had an interview. And he goes, no, not here. And when I realized I was at the wrong place, it's like, oh, geez, Pete. So I go home that afternoon, and my sister's like, she goes, remember I told you could stay as long as you need to get your feet settled? And she goes, you got to go. And right then the phone rang, and it was that same owner, and he said, how would you like a job delivering for us to get your foot in it? And I said, I'll take it. So
Exactly.
got a job, 650 an hour, driving a van for a photo studio. 8 years later, I was running the place as their head production manager of the whole thing. So I went from that to like black and white printing, color printing, went into the studio, started shooting, became a photographer there. And mostly I was assisting and shooting combo. And then a couple opportunities came up that I could actually manage, and I ended up being the production manager and kind of ran the whole place at the end. And so it was an 8-year journey at this place that taught me a lot. And from there, then I came back to Ohio and started Eclipse.
Yeah, I mean, I just love that story because it there's so much just luck and chance and things like that that
Oh, yeah.
happen, and it was kind of in a skill area that you had. I mean, it was just I mean, fate worked some magic there.
Yeah, it's kind of what are the odds that I would have got a job there and I went to the wrong place and then I ended up being there for 8 years. And yeah, so a lot of luck.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what made you decide to come back to Ohio and open your own place?
So I met my wife Sandy out in California. So she was from Wisconsin, and we both at one point said, we're living in double income, no kids in California, having a great time. But to buy a house out there, super expensive. I start getting the entrepreneurial itch. I wanted to have my own thing. So to start up my own business with non-competes would be very, very difficult.
Mhm.
We just
Mhm.
started exploring, and we actually gave up. We tried for like 6 months of looking in other areas, and nothing was really falling into place. And then around Christmas of '92, she got a call from Express and said, would you like to come out? So we both flew out to Columbus. We checked out the market. And I told her that we could not come back unless she got at least a 20% increase in her pay.
Mhm.
So I get in the car after our interview, and we actually went to, I think it was Macy's, and bought her a new outfit that we had no business buying because we had no money.
Right.
And so anyways, we we got into this. Um, she got back in the car and she goes, "Oh, what was that amount you said again?" I was like, "I said 20%." She goes, "Oh, good, I took the job." And I was like, "What?" So that's what brought us back. So we came back here, and then I started exploring the market. And Columbus was, in the early '90s, was it reminded me a little bit of Silicon Valley. Like you could see, it was a very growth-minded city, and had a lot of potential. And you look at what happened since '93 when we came back to today.
Yep.
It's amazing what Columbus has done. So it was very exciting to be a part of that whole process as well. And so yeah, that's what brought us back.
That's fantastic. So, and you've been doing this for a long time. At least your LinkedIn page says you were 8 years at as solar imaging, and then 14 now with Eclipse. Is that math correct? That is crazy.
So yes, so we started. Eclipse Studios was my original company. So that started in '93, '94 technically. So '93 we were exploring. '94 we launched it, and it was October of '94 that we actually launched. And then we started solar imaging in 1999, I think it was, or 2000. And it was our print division. So we spun off the printing side because I felt like if you had people didn't understand if you're a photographer, you're a photographer. If you're printing, you're printing.
Right.
And having the combo, I think, was confusing to people. So we decided at that point to basically split it. And then a few years later, we started up a third division that did all our pre-press work because with
Hmm.
digital photography, back in the day when it first started, nobody knew how to deal with the files. And a digital photo would kind of fall apart if you didn't know what you were doing. So we had to learn pre-press and CMYK and everything that went into offset printing. We had to learn in the digital photo world, which kind of made us kind of pioneers of a lot of things
Oh,
because
absolutely.
even though I wasn't the first digital photography studio, it's probably the first digital lab that started doing printing on plotters and things, and
Hmm.
'cause everything else was traditional still at that time. And so we were out teaching people how Epson proofs are better than Kodak proofs, and that there's a new way of doing things, and it just kind of blossomed. And so we started up a third company called Page One, and that was around for probably 6, 7 years,
Hmm.
and we kept growing them. And then we started Eclipse Corp, which you mentioned at the beginning, which was going to be like our limited. We were going to be the limited brands. Here's our
Right. Right. Have all these offerings.
yeah. And then we realized I just confused people more, so I brought it all into one and created Eclipse Creative, and that's where we are today. So
Awesome.
yeah,
That's so great. That is so great. And just to kind of give a little bit of a shout out to what you do over there, I will have to say I really do commend you for always being kind of on. You didn't say you're always not necessarily on the cutting edge, but I think you kind of are. You've always stayed very current. You didn't just stick with photography. Just the things that you mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation, I think are absolutely fantastic. I mean, like 3D printing. I mean, everybody's like all in that, and like the trade show market's back, and you're back on that. So I mean, it's really great how you have just evolved over the years in order to serve your clients better.
yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job with that. And my wife gets a little nervous when I go to trade shows because I usually see something that's cool and I think, oh, I can sell that.
Exactly.
And I think everything though we do still fits to our core, and that's being creative, and that's
Absolutely.
being and also igniting brands, and that's kind of our purpose that we try to do. And it's always kind of been locked into that, which has been
Hmm.
really really good. So everything kind of just fell into place with that, and we'll keep adding if we think it stays with our core.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's great. Like I said, I think it's great to be so flexible and be able to pivot to serve your clients a lot better.
Yeah.
Now, I am going to back this up even a little more.
Okay.
And I am really wanting to know, Jeff, what you did as a kid that was fun and creative.
Oh boy, as a
What were the things that
kid,
just
so
like you were excited to get out of bed to do and you had no responsibility? And what were those things that you did?
So we probably so it's funny. My folks both got divorced when I was 6. We moved around a lot. So with a lot of moving around, you start meeting a lot of different people and changes. So we were always very creative, and I lived in a lot of apartments and townhouses as we moved around, and so there weren't really baseball fields and stuff. And so I love baseball. So
Right.
I slept with my glove,
Oh, that's
and so
great.
we would create baseball fields out of little parks, and we would take
Hmm.
laundry detergent to make your chalk lines, and we would just that was kind of like we would play baseball from sun up to sundown. And if we weren't playing baseball, we were probably, playing some sort of a army game or something. We were just kids, we were like the
Right.
sandlot kids. We rode our bikes a lot. We would try to do evil Knievel stuff that was not smart, jumping over garbage cans and crazy stuff like that, which I could never do today. I am the worst. But and then we also drew a lot. So we did like comic books.
Oh,
So
fun.
we would actually take them, create our own characters, and make comic book people, and then we would kind of do that a little bit. And but I think mostly it was like just friends and playing and just being creative outside. We were always outside.
Yeah.
It could be 2 degrees outside, and we were still outside playing something.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, which is different than today's world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do think that to a certain degree, kids are missing out on a lot of that, just that freedom and the importance of nature and being outside. And I was going to comment about your ingenuity about using laundry detergent to draw the chalk lines
Yeah,
for
yeah.
for the baseball. And I mean,
Now
but
with the
that's the sort of stuff
rain,
that
it
we
got interesting.
that's the sort of stuff. Yeah, that's true. But that's the sort of stuff that I think is just really so important in development. As you're growing up, is to be innovative, and I think that that kind of sparks being innovative when you're older too. Those are the things that kind of warm you up for reinventing and, like I said, serving your clients in a different way and really figuring out problem solving and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think that entrepreneurial people or entrepreneurs are they're always the ones that are like thinking of new ideas and different ways to do things, and they just have that kind of you can just tell a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when I was at my company in California, and when I actually resigned, I walked into and it was a different owner at that time, but he was there when I first started, and he bought in and became the full owner later on. And when I went and sat down with him, I said, I got to talk to you about something. And he's like, you're leaving to start your own business. And I was like, how'd you know? He goes, you're the only entrepreneur in this place. He goes, you were always thinking different than everybody else.
Oh,
And
I
so,
love that he called that out like that.
yeah, so he gave me a camera and a lens and says, don't compete and go have fun. And we've still talked
Oh,
today.
wow.
So, yeah, so it's kind
That's
of cool.
real. Such a great story. That is really, really great. And I think all of that is absolutely true. And I can think of a conversation that I had with somebody that I did not know was a visionary entrepreneur sort of type at the time. They were asking, "Well, what are you up to?" So I said, "Well, I'm doing this, but I had this idea." And then immediately chimed in with "Oh, you know what else you could do?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I found my person." Because that's the way the conversations work with entrepreneurs and people that are visionaries. It's always like, "Oh, you know what else you could do? And what else we could try? And have you thought about this?" And yeah, it just supercharges the whole thing when you are in a conversation with somebody that thinks like yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I think it'd be hard to work for somebody else now, too. I think I could do it still, but
Yeah.
because you always think I can do it better or I can do it different, or your brain starts to go into the mode. I mean, it's just what it
Yeah.
is.
You definitely have to have just a long lead to work for somebody else, and I'm kind of like you. I don't know if that's even possible anymore, just because your thoughts get so big, and if somebody doesn't think like you, it can be kind of constraining. So
Sure,
it
sure.
makes absolute sense.
Yep.
What is next for Eclipse Creative? What else would you like to
So,
do, or other than conquer the world? Because you seem to be all over the United States. So,
well, we want to keep growing. One of our other core values is growth minded, and so I feel like if you're not growing, you're stopping. And so
hmm.
I'm a big believer in keep going. I don't think retirement's ever going to be in my future,
Oh, that's
just
interesting.
because I like to do what I do.
Right.
And now I might slow down a little bit someday, but but I really enjoy creating the next, and we're just trying to figure that out. I think the trade show thing was a lot of fun that we've done, and I think there's a lot of growth there that we're going to have.
Yeah.
We
And that's
started out
exciting.
in my garage, and now we got 76,000 square feet. It's just
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's kind of crazy. And so I think the exhibit side, this is kind of where I see things going, is going to feed into our photography and feed into video and feed
Oh,
into
gosh, yeah.
everything else we do. Which is just going to create more opportunities to help ignite brands. So we had it's funny. I started shooting for trade shows when I started this whole thing because that's what I knew from my old job. And it's now I own a trade show business, which is like kind of going full circle
I love it.
with that. But I think it's a big part of it. 3D is still a big part of it. It's evolving and changing. I think it's going to continue to evolve. It's going to get faster and faster and better quality. I think eventually you can 3D print things in color instead of right now. Right now it's like a resin that's clear or
Yeah,
gray. But I think eventually they're going to start to bring color into play
right.
very soon and large. I'm talking large scale too. And I think eventually, this is probably still years down the road, that you'll see 3D where I think it'll actually print and finish all within the same booth. I think it'll actually come out as a final piece. And I think that's still probably 5, 10 years away, but to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
part of all that will be fun.
That's
And I
really,
think
really cool.
photography's gonna stay with it. It's kind of funny how that's what started it, and it's gone through. These iPhones have kind of hurt us.
Yeah.
Certain things have changed the industry dramatically. We went high in technology, and it made us really strong for a long time, and then it actually started to hurt us eventually.
Hmm.
But I think it's kind of coming back in a different way because of like the trade shows. That's why I think it's all going to feed off each other.
I would agree. Did you have any thoughts before I wrap this up on how AI has affected your industry too? I mean, because I always feel like it's just you're kind of giving people a tool that doesn't really know how to use it.
Yeah, and I think it's like anything else. It's gonna for a minute, it's gonna be an ouch here and there. So retouching is definitely where AI has, and video editing, AI has
Hmm.
really come into play. But if you don't know how to do this stuff at the beginning, like we used to have our photographers had to learn film before we let them do digital.
Yeah,
And now they come out of school, they don't have any clue what film is. I mean, they just don't
right.
do it anymore. So I can't really do that anymore. But it's I think knowing traditional ways of doing things and just people who are creative, my photographers, they understand composition and lighting. And you
Yes.
could put all the other stuff in the world that you can. It's going to be close, but it's not going to be the same. So I think there's still going to be. It's a tool, and I have to look
Yeah.
at it now as it's a tool that we can use to enhance what we do, but it's not going to take over what we do.
I agree 100%. I think there's still a lot to be said about the person behind the camera that's bringing their talent versus, it just being algorithms and code and things like that. So, yeah, I love photography so much as well because I do think that that's where the talent is, because everybody has seen a snapshot versus something that might be in National Geographic's photo of the year sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's the difference, people.
Exactly, and I don't think that no matter what, I don't think well, obviously, AI is not gonna start printing my prints. It may
Right,
have
right.
robotics doing stuff there, but you still need other parts of what we do, and I think it's still all will merge, and we'll use AI. We already
Yeah,
do a
oh,
little.
absolutely. Again, it's a tool, and I think used properly, it's probably fantastic. But
Yep.
I mean, I just from what I use it for with like ChatGPT and stuff like that, it's like I might have an idea. Like, can you just check the grammar on this? I mean, or well, actually, I use Grammarly for that. But I need a better example. But can you make this sound more professional? Because I will tend to write kind of casual, and it'll produce something that's actually pretty good. I might change a word here and there because I would never use that word, and you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, no, it's
But
great.
yeah, it can be kind of handy. So,
Yeah,
but I would
absolutely.
never let it write everything for me.
Yeah, yeah, well, and I'm a terrible writer, so I do run-on sentences, so AI can help clean all that up a little bit,
Exactly.
so it makes me look like I'm
Exactly.
a little smarter.
Exactly. That's what those things are for. That's what those tools are for. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. I have enjoyed this conversation, and I'm so thrilled to have been able to share your, like I said, your journey because I think it offers a lot of great information for people that might be in the middle of their journey somewhere and then not really seeing that there are opportunities out there that might just fall into their lap that leads them to their next thing. And and you just found exactly where you need to be, which is so cool. So
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
not a problem. And this will be out with your information so people can get a hold of you if they need any of those things you talked about because you offer a plethora of things. So your website will be available to contact you or learn more about Eclipse Creative. So
Awesome.
thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.